So let's set the scene. It's the summer of 1981, specifically July 29th, and it feels like the entire world just paused for a moment.
It really did. An estimated 750 million people, which is just a staggering number.
I mean, think about that. A quarter of the globe's population back then, all tuned in to watch one thing.
The wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer, and what they saw was, well, it was pure pomp and pageantry. The immense gown, that golden carriage.
The shy smile. It was, without a doubt, framed as the definitive, real-life fairy tale, the storybook ending.
And that collective belief, that perfect image, is exactly where we have to start our deep dive today.
Why there?
Because the truth, the almost immediate and chilling reality behind those castle doors was that the dream was already dissolving. It was becoming a nightmare.
So that's what we're here to do. We're going to chart the extraordinary, and I think it's fair to say profoundly difficult, life of Diana, Princess of Wales.
Exactly. Our mission really is to analyze her transformation, how she navigated this intense, often just crippling private pain.
And this relentless public scrutiny, it never stopped.
Never. And how she managed to take that blinding fame and purposefully mold it into this lasting and strategic force for humanitarian good.
It's such a compelling arc when you lay it out like that. You trace this journey from an isolated royal figure through a frankly toxic marriage. And then she finds this independent voice and ultimately achieves this kind of global status, the people's princess.
Right. And she was, she was a fashion icon, a devoted mother, but her most powerful legacy, the thing we're really digging into, is her ability to just flip the script on celebrity itself.
Absolutely. And the sources are very clear that she knew the institution she'd married into needed an update.
She did. She had this vision.
There's that crucial quote where she says, "I would like a monarchy that has more contact with its people."
And that wasn't just some hopeful wish, was it? That became her operational blueprint. It was a radical vision for redefining what royalty could even mean in the modern age.
And I think that's why her story still has such relevance for you, for the listener, today. It's a real examination of profound resilience.
It's almost a masterclass in how a platform, and it doesn't matter how you got it or how reluctantly,
Right.
it can be strategically used to champion the voiceless. She didn't just endure the spotlight. She learned how to harness it. She turned its intensity outward onto the issues she cared about instead of just letting it consume her.
Okay, so let's unpack that journey. Let's start with that initial overwhelming isolation. Because she wasn't just unprepared for the spotlight.
No, not at all.
She was utterly consumed by a media storm the moment that engagement was announced. Overnight, she went from being this, relatively obscure figure
To arguably the most photographed woman on Earth. And that wasn't a gradual transition. There was no ramp up.
It was just, boom, instantaneous.
And terrifying. The speed of it is something that I think gets understated. The media became just relentless.
Every single outing, every outfit she wore, every facial expression was scrutinized and then just amplified globally.
And you have to remember how young she was. She had no existing framework, not psychologically, not from the institution, for how to handle that kind of constant crushing pressure.
And when we talk about the foundation of the marriage she was entering into, it just highlights how superficial the whole arrangement was.
Oh, absolutely. The source material points to a staggering detail.
The 13 meetings, right?
Exactly. She and Prince Charles had reportedly only met 13 times before they became engaged.
13 times. I mean, just let that sink in for a moment. You're forging a lifelong partnership that's supposed to define the future of the British monarchy.
And it's based on what? Less than 2 weeks worth of encounters? It's not a foundation. It's a complete gamble.
It really speaks volumes about the priorities of the institution at the time, doesn't it?
It does. The expectation was that the woman, Diana, would just step into the role. The personal connection, that was secondary. If it materialized at all, great.
But that wasn't her. She came into this with a deep, earnest desire for a true partnership. A team.
A teams. That's the perfect word for it.
And that hope was just crushed.
Yeah.
Almost immediately.
Yes. She spoke about it later, about how the reality of her new life just denied her that partnership from day one.
So the public sees this glittering spectacle, the jewels, the dresses, the world travel.
But Diana was experiencing this profound, just soul-crushing isolation behind those closed palace doors. She realized so quickly she wasn't just married to a man, she was married to a role.
In a role that felt utterly loveless.
And that intense pressure of royal life, combined with the devastating truth of that loveless marriage, it inevitably led to these profound personal struggles. Things that were completely hidden from the public gaze.
This is where her story becomes so raw and human. It illustrates the toll that massive gap between public perception and private reality can take on a person.
Mm-hmm. And we have to talk about her battle with bulimia nervosa.
We do. It's a crucial element of her story, especially because she chose, with just immense courage later on, to speak about it so openly.
Which nobody was doing back then. In the 1980s, eating disorders were just not discussed, certainly not by a member of the royal family. It was taboo.
Her honesty was nothing short of revolutionary.
And when she did talk about it, notice how she framed it. It wasn't just an illness, she called it a symptom.
The symptom of feeling unloved and intensely unhappy within the marriage.
Right. She articulated it as this desperate, tragic way to try and cope with a life that she said felt completely out of her control.
And that concept of control is so key here. When your schedule, your clothes, your appearances, your entire future is curated and managed and judged by an institution and the global media.
What's left?
Your body. It becomes the last territory where you feel like you can exercise some kind of autonomous power. Her struggle was a manifestation of just complete powerlessness.
Exactly. It was this private, painful battle that contrasted so sharply with the perfect public image she was forced to maintain every single day.
And on top of that, you add in the profound loneliness she felt and her experience with postnatal depression after her sons were born.
It creates this grim private picture that was the total opposite of the public narrative of the radiant, happy Princess of Wales.
And of course, this private misery, it eventually boils over. It's all centered on the indisputable source of the marriage breakdown.
Prince Charles's long-running affair with Camilla Parker Bowles.
The situation just became completely unsustainable for Diana, and she realized the only way to get any agency back was to take control of her own story.
Which leads us directly to one of the most explosive broadcasts in the history of UK television.
The 1995 BBC Panorama interview.
Yes. And we have to understand this not just as some sort of tell-all. It was a calculated strike, a strategic move against the institution that she felt was suffocating her.
The audience figures alone are just staggering. 22.8 million people watched it in the UK. Just in the UK.
The entire nation stopped. It wasn't just news. It was a massive cultural event.
And it was a watershed moment because of how she delivered her side of the story. She looked right into the camera.
A very intimate, very unusual thing for a royal to do.
And she maintained this unnerving composure as she spoke her truth.
Then came the line that became instantly iconic, her calm admission.
There were 3 of us in this marriage.
So it was a crowded one, a direct, unambiguous confirmation of what the public had suspected for years. But this time, it wasn't coming from the tabloids.
It was coming directly from the source, a complete power move, bypassing the entire palace press machine.
But an act of self-empowerment like that, it was always going to come at an institutional cost.
A huge one. The sources note that while the interview gave Diana the voice she so desperately needed, completely unmediated by the palace.
It also irrevocably sealed the fate of the marriage. The fallout was immediate, and it was seismic.
Within a month, just 1 month after that broadcast, the Queen herself, as the head of the institution.
She advised the couple to formally divorce.
Right. They'd been separated since 1992, but this was the final break. The divorce was finalized in 1996, and that marked the institutional end of her royal life.
And this is where we see that critical moment of transformation we're talking about. Post-divorce, she was stripped of that highly important Her Royal Highness title.
And you would think, okay, losing a title like that, it diminishes your power.
But the sources argue the exact opposite was true.
It didn't diminish her power at all. It liberated it.
Yes. That title, Her Royal Highness, it comes with centuries-old protocols, strict rules about political neutrality, which charities you can endorse.
By losing it, she was suddenly free of all those constraints.
She kept the title Princess of Wales, and more importantly, she kept her overwhelming global fame. She was unleashed.
So she's no longer bound by the rules of a working royal, but she is still, unequivocally, one of the most recognizable women on the planet.
And this right here, this is the key pivot point. She goes from being a constrained royal figure to an independent, globally empowered humanitarian. She had the fame, and now, crucially, she had the strategic freedom to direct it.
And she adopts this brilliant, almost counterintuitive new strategy.
It's so smart. Essentially, if the paparazzi are going to follow you everywhere, and that was a fact of her life she couldn't control,
Right.
she decided she would lead them somewhere they could actually do some good.
She stopped being the object of the media's gaze and became the conductor. She started strategically deploying her celebrity capital for global causes.
This was revolutionary. No royal figure had ever weaponized their own celebrity in quite this way before. It started to change the very definition of what a royal, or in her case, an ex-royal, could achieve.
Her humanitarian work became less about simple patronage and more about calculated, media-driven advocacy.
And you can see the immediate impact of this in one of her most iconic early moves. This was back in 1987, so well before the divorce. But it shows her willingness to defy that stiff institutional protocol.
We're talking about the height of the AIDS crisis.
The absolute height. And it's so difficult to convey the atmosphere of that time to a modern audience.
You really have to remember the context. There was rampant misinformation suggesting HIV and AIDS were transmissible through casual contact.
So you had crippling fear, intense social stigma against anyone who was suffering. Many people genuinely believed they could catch the disease just by touching an infected person.
And into that environment of deep-seated ignorance and panic, Diana makes a choice.
She chooses to open the UK's first ever dedicated HIV/AIDS unit at a London hospital. But it was more than just showing up for the photo op.
Much more.
Yeah.
Then came the symbolic act. She sat down, she spoke to a patient, and then in front of all the assembled cameras.
She shook his hand, without wearing gloves.
That one photograph, the shockwave from that single image was global.
It was an image of a princess, a global-style icon, intimately and gently connecting with a marginalized, feared patient. She was visually refuting the ignorance of an entire decade in one single gesture.
It was a visual argument. So much more powerful than any government health campaign. It was instantaneous, globally understood.
And it immediately challenged that toxic stigma. And she followed the action with a simple, clear message. She said, HIV does not make people dangerous to know. You can shake their hands and give them a hug. Heaven knows they need it.
That statement just cut through years of fear-mongering. It legitimized the suffering of thousands of people.
What's so fascinating is that she didn't just limit this compassionate symbolism to one issue. She took that same strategy and applied it to other ancient, deeply ingrained stigmas.
We see this so clearly with her patronage of the leprosy mission.
Right. Leprosy carried these almost biblical-era myths that it was highly contagious through casual contact.
Which resulted in intense social ostracization, especially in places like India and Nepal, where she visited hospitals.
And again, she used her physical presence as proof of concept. During her visits, she made a very specific point of touching the patients, holding their hands, sitting right beside them, all while the international media was watching and filming.
And she was quoted as saying her goal was always to touch people with leprosy, trying to show in a simple action that they are not reviled, nor are we repulsed.
It was always about that simple human connection, using that to override institutional fear and just baseless medical myths.
But it's important to note, she wasn't just interested in the big international causes. She applied this same hands-on, empathetic approach to domestic issues, too.
Like her work with Centerpoint, starting in 1992. It focused on homelessness, and specifically the severe plight of homeless youth.
And the sources really emphasize how hands-on her engagement was there. She wasn't just showing up for a gala dinner and a photo.
No, she'd show up unannounced. She would sit on the beds in the shelters. She would hold hands. And critically, she would actually listen to the young people's stories.
She was bringing the full force of her empathy to bear on people who are so often just invisible to the rest of society.
And that focus on truly listening, that's essential. She was leveraging the media attention not to validate herself, but to validate the reality of these young people. She forced the cameras to focus on their faces, their needs.
And divert attention away from the endless speculation about her own life.
This consistent pattern, using her body, her fame, her courage to combat global ignorance and advocate for the forgotten, it all culminated in what was perhaps her most daring and politically charged work.
And this was carried out in the final months of her life.
Her landmine campaign.
This really was her final global crusade. It takes us to Angola in January of 1997. And you really have to paint a picture of the devastation there.
Oh, it was horrific. Angola had been ravaged by decades of civil war, and at that time it was estimated to be littered with a horrifying 15 million landmines.
A number that's almost impossible to comprehend. And it gave the country the highest number of amputees per person in the entire world.
It was a silent humanitarian disaster, claiming thousands of lives and limbs long after the fighting had officially stopped. And Diana made a very deliberate, very political choice to step right into that minefield.
And it was a move that was immediately criticized by elements of the British government at the time. Some Tory politicians felt she was meddling in complex foreign policy.
They did, but she went anyway. She flew into the region, she put on body armor, and she walked through a live minefield that was actively being cleared by the Halo Trust.
And to give some context here, the Halo Trust is a humanitarian organization.
Right.
They remove the deadly remnants of war.
And they were guiding her. The body armor was not for show. The area was genuinely dangerous. This was not a staged photo op on a cleared patch of grass. She was walking a narrow, newly cleared path surrounded by deadly explosives.
The images that came out of that visit, this global icon in protective gear, walking amongst that very real danger, they were electrifying and completely intentional.
She brought the horror of this invisible, insidious weapon directly into living rooms across the globe.
But her strategy was always two-pronged, wasn't it? It was courage and then connection.
Always. She didn't just walk the minefield. She spent crucial time with the victims. She sat with child amputees.
So she brought a profoundly human, undeniable face to what had previously been discussed in policy papers as a military or disarmament issue.
She completely shifted the conversation. Suddenly, landmines weren't about military logistics anymore. They were about humanitarian suffering.
They were about children losing their limbs while walking to school, about farmers who couldn't plant their crops. She changed the entire emotional texture of the global debate.
And the political impact was immediate and profound. Her advocacy is widely credited with creating this unstoppable surge of public pressure that policymakers just could not ignore anymore.
Governments were suddenly facing pictures of Diana comforting child victims on the evening news. They had to respond to the humanitarian demand, not just the military one.
And just months after her visit, you see the results in global policy. The Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Treaty, the Ottawa Treaty, was signed by 122 countries later that year.
And her role in accelerating that and getting it from an idea to a binding treaty is just undeniable.
It's one of the most powerful examples of celebrity being successfully leveraged for measurable, high-stakes policy change in the entire 20th century.
But tragically, her life was cut short shortly after this campaign began. It prevented her from completing her goal of traveling to other mined countries.
Which brings us to that moment of global shock. On August 31st, 1997, the news breaks that Diana had died in a car crash in Paris.
She was only 36 years old.
And the world just genuinely stopped. The global outpouring of mourning was unprecedented. It was far beyond anything seen for a royal figure before, especially a former royal.
This was the loss of the people's princess. Billions of people watched her funeral, standing silent in the streets, mourning a woman they felt they knew, a woman who had connected with them through her openness and her pain.
It was this collective experience of grief that actually forced a reaction from the very institution she had battled for years. Her death cemented her legacy and triggered what we now understand as the Diana effect.
And that effect profoundly altered British institutions and global societal norms.
First and foremost, she dragged the monarchy, kicking and screaming, some might say, into the modern world. She proved that royalty could be vulnerable, it could be human.
That it could deeply connect with real people and real suffering. She shattered that stiff, emotionally detached image that the institution had relied on for so long.
She normalized showing emotion in public, and her impact also extended so powerfully into health advocacy.
We talked about her early honesty about her bulimia.
Her openness caused a reported massive spike in people seeking help for eating disorders all over the world. She showed that these were legitimate, serious illnesses, and she broke down decades of secrecy and shame around them.
And when you look at her overall impact on charity and humanitarian causes in those final years, some sources make a pretty staggering assessment.
They do. Some say her contribution is greater than anyone else's in the 20th century.
Which is a huge claim.
It's a huge claim, but when you consider the breadth of her work, from changing the global stigma around AIDS to her policy-shifting advocacy on landmines, it's a claim that holds significant weight. She used her platform as a megaphone for the marginalized in a way no one had before her.
And maybe the most visible and continuous demonstration of that legacy is carried on by her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry.
Absolutely. They have consistently taken up her torch, championing many of the same charities and adopting her hands-on, empathetic style of engagement.
And they've also focused so heavily on mental health advocacy.
Which is a direct continuation of the conversation their mother so courageously started all those years ago. By openly discussing emotional and psychological struggles, they're normalizing the conversation, mirroring their mother's revolutionary honesty about her own pain.
It comes back to a core lesson that Prince William himself quoted once. He said his mother taught him there was a life outside the palace walls.
And that lesson, the importance of connection and looking beyond your own bubble, has clearly guided both brothers in their own humanitarian work. It was Diana's ultimate superpower: connection.
So when we synthesize this incredible, challenging journey, what we see is resilience defined. She took this intense private pain, the bulimia, the loneliness, the fractured marriage.
And she deliberately transformed it into a global, actionable purpose.
She redefined what nobility even meant in a modern era. Her story proves that true nobility isn't about a title or a bloodline.
No, it's about the heart you bring to the world. It's about the specific actions you take to alleviate suffering no matter what limitations are placed on you.
She remains this enduring symbol of empathy, a testament to the power of extraordinary fame when it's used for good.
She gave a voice to the voiceless, whether that was by embracing an AIDS patient, touching someone suffering from leprosy, or literally walking into a minefield to advocate for children caught in the crossfire of war.
And that brings us to our final, provocative thought for you, the listener. Diana's journey is just this powerful reminder that one person's courage, especially when it's paired with a platform, can fundamentally change the world.
She stepped out of the shadows, she embraced her vulnerability, and she connected with people on the ground, face to face.
So as you reflect on the lasting power of her legacy, maybe consider the platform that you possess, whether it's through your job, your community, your social network. It doesn't have to be global.
What are the small, courageous steps you can take today to better connect with people or to advocate for a cause that you care about?
Her story proves that stepping out of the shadows, using your unique voice, and making that human connection, that is the ultimate enduring act of power.